You're listening to Rebel Spirituality with me, Sam Goldfinch. Here's the truth. Wisdom doesn't follow rules. So each week we're going to explore what it means to wake up your way so you can live a more peaceful, creative and inspired life no matter your circumstances. It's time to blaze your unique path to truth.
There is a huge injustice here. This is probably the biggest injustice in generations. The fact that we're not teaching our children who they are really and how their experience is created from the inside out, moment to moment. And we are suffering as a result. I have had a number of conversations this week with classroom practitioners, with head teachers who are dealing with deeply disturbed children, distressed, fearful, and that's showing up in their behaviour and the amount of kind of exclusions and challenges that come from that. So there is a root cause, and the root cause is children are confused and fearful because they do not understand who they are.
Hey friend, so this week I have my good friend Sarah Armitage on the podcast, talking about all of the amazing work that she's doing in the education sector, but not just the education sector, and the way that she and her amazing team are spreading the inside out understanding in a way that is really important, like really doing the work on the ground. So this filters through to people in their day-to-day lives, it filters through to children as well in just a really profound and special way. I love what Sarah's up to, and anything I can do to put the message out there, I'm down for. So here I am doing that. Okay, team, without further ado, I'll hand you over to me and Sarah. See you on the show. Right, I'm here with my good friend Sarah Armitage for definitely the second time. I know we've spoken a few times. I think this is the second episode we've recorded though, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and that would have been about a year ago. Gosh, it wasn't an hour ago. But I think it's probably fair to say that a lot's changed. And in some ways, probably nothing has changed for both of us, I guess, over the course of that time. And you're doing a bunch of amazing work in the education space, but you also said in many other areas now too, right? Humanitarian space. And so it'd be really, really nice, because a lot of people listening probably won't have heard that first episode. It would be lovely to hear just a little bit about you, Sarah, and what you're up to in the world. And then let's just see where we end up, I guess.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's a real pleasure to be back, Sam. Thank you so much for suggesting it. It's great to catch up.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you, mate, always.
So I guess the short story is, for the last 3 years, myself and an amazing little team have been running a transformational change program called Pure Potential. And it is an immersive program that generally takes about 3 months. And it's for groups of leaders to come together and really explore their own human experience. I guess to answer 2 questions, how is it created? What are the features of this design that's running the show moment to moment? And then, given that, who or what am I really, given that understanding? And then how to align with that, how to be in line with the reality of how this incredible human system works. Because I think you would agree, generally, when we're aligned with how it works, we tend to tap into a whole host of amazing capacities that are innately built into the human design. Be that creativity, confidence, well-being, innovation, connection, clarity, resilience. It's all there.
Yeah, I love it. There's this really powerful distinction that we were talking about just before we hit record. Well, I didn't frame it like this, but there's a big, big difference between seeing how we work, seeing how our experience is really being created. And I mean, many people listening will, banging on about the inside out thing, left, right, and center, but how it's being created, and versus thinking about how it works and all that kind of stuff. And I know for me, I can lose sight of that. I'm living it, but really I'm thinking about it a lot and that kind of stuff, versus truly seeing. And in paradigm, I guess in the first paradigm, it only works one way, but when we don't see how it really works, our thought stream is coming much more from kind of a very much closed off, kind of hyper personalized, reactive, often very judgmental kind of space. And when we connect to this much more open source, as I know a lot of your programs are about tapping into that potential, it's not something that we need to earn or achieve. It's like it's already in there waiting. The thought stream shifts, and just what moves through us in that seeing is
Yeah.
profound and very different no matter what's happened to us, right? Like it's not, this is only reserved for some people and you can't access this if you went through a bunch of shit in your life. It's what we're talking about here is really quite radical, actually. It goes in the face of almost, well, as far as I can tell, pretty much everything else in the self-help movement or personal development world. It's almost the complete opposite of any kind of effort
Yeah.
needed, you know?
I would agree. It's a complete orientation, but when you see it, it makes complete sense because, why wouldn't it? We have nature, the universe, depending on, your faith position, has created us. We are this incredible human form with immense capacity. So it actually wouldn't make sense that we have to effort out all of these capabilities. It would make far more sense that they're actually built into the design, and then we just need to get out of the way and let them shine and flourish and be present in the world. So I totally agree with you. It's absolutely radical, but when you sit with it, it has such a foundation of truth to it, a
Yeah.
logic almost.
So I know that Pure Potential was born, was it 4 years ago?
Hmm.
And you've been running these programs in schools and various other things. But just for take me to the inception of it for a minute. Like what was it like to realize to kind of tap into that potential that was there for you and think, shit, like there's something I want to bring into the world. How did that come into being?
So I guess my own realization, I can't remember whether I mentioned any of this when we last spoke. My own realization, my big revelation came courtesy of my incredible daughter who's now 21.
Yeah.
She is one of the most amazing, resilient young women I think I've ever known. She continues to inspire me every day. She has autism and social anxiety. She finds life very challenging and yet meets life with an incredible, robust resilience. She's nearly finished a degree at a Russell Group University, so
Cool.
I'm incredibly proud of her. So she was subject to a lot of kind of counseling and therapy, very traditional. You need to, and now I think about it, it was all there is an ego, and you've got to improve that ego in order to have a better experience. So that was the paradigm. And innocently, I think that still is very much the mainstream. But then we were pointed in a different direction. And that led me to really explore this paradigm and this understanding. And it has yielded immeasurable benefit. It really has. But from a kind of a cognitive level, I guess, an emotional level, a kind of a sense of expansiveness. Yeah, and then that's developed in a kind of faith direction. So it's been hugely enriching to me and my life and happened at a time through great upheaval and challenges and change. But there's something about being rooted in reality that allows you to kind of weather those challenges, which I'm extremely grateful for. The classic metaphor of the tree being really strongly rooted and well nourished by the river and the stream, and then it can survive a hurricane. It can absolutely bend but it still remains solid and rooted in the ground. So that's, I guess, my experience personally.
Yeah, nice. It's cool. And it strikes me that there's something for as long as we keep talking about the understanding. For a lot of people listed either three principles understanding, the inside out understanding. People will have heard it called different things, but for as long as it looks cognitive, it just looks like another tool. It looks
Yeah.
like it goes in the bracket with CBT or with, oh, well, it's
Yeah.
a bit like this and it's a bit like that. It's sort of like CBT with mindfulness thrown in, or it's positive thinking, and it really looks like that until we truly come to understand the nature of something being spiritual and how it
Yeah.
that we truly are spiritual beings. And of course that word as well for some people has baggage, and it carries it's not necessarily clean language for some people, although I think more and more these days it is hopefully going that way. But yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like it's because I just heard you mention that kind of move from it becoming it being helpful at a cognitive level, and and it is. There's no doubt that it is helpful, but it's transformational. I think when we see it for what's really being pointed to here.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there is. I mean, I've asked this question to a lot of people, how do you think change actually happens?
Yeah, great question.
And I think it is, my sense of it is, the whole of the universe is movement, is energy and movement. It has a momentum, it has a direction to it, it has a sense of evolution to a purpose or a meaning. It's a meaningful existence, a meaningful universe. So if that is the case, then actually that's at play all the time. So it's only our resistance or misalignment from that that actually stops that naturally unfolding and being released and seen and expressed in the world.
It really is subtractive, like our mutual good friend Jamie Smart would say.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that, I mean, when really seen, because it's funny, it strikes me that most people think that change is linear, that change is it goes from that way to that way or whatever. People will have an idea of how it moves in their head, that it's gradual, that it takes a lot of hard work. Like it's fascinating to ask people what their philosophy of change is, or how change actually happens. People will tend to spit out about a lot of beliefs, and and
Yeah.
we'll all do that. But
Mm.
it seems to me that most people get the message that change requires effort, huge amounts of willpower, a lot of hard work. It's quite slow and it's incremental. That's something that's quite common. Not everyone, but people will say that. And I
Mm.
wonder, really, in light of what we're talking about, is it's almost like it's the opposite. It's almost like that which we're looking to transform into is already done. It's already there. It's just the falling away of whatever it is that's kind of eclipsing that and in the way. So in a very real way, it's not linear. It's not progressive in the way that we tend to relate to things like this.
Yeah.
It's more like a field of, I don't know, getting weird with language now, potentiality or something that we're tapping
Yeah,
into
yeah,
that's opening,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's fascinating to us because we ask the question as part. We have a closing ceremony at the end of the program, and we ask the question. So the program is called Pure Potential. What does
Yeah.
that mean to you now? Now you've been, and it's fascinating to hear people's responses to that. They pick up on the pure. So there's an element of
Mm.
this is something that's natural, organic, real, and there's something about the potential, which is, as you said, exists within this field of aliveness that we're all part of, So I think if you put those two things together, you're absolutely right. It's an ongoing revelation, it's an ongoing realization. And if we know that, the beautiful thing about this is if we know that, then it's almost, we can just allow that. Every day is a little kind of mini adventure in revelation, isn't it? And we talk about the program being insight-based learning. So all we have to do, if we're doing our job right, is create the safe conditions
Yeah.
where people can come to this, do the exploration, do the self-inquiry, do a little bit of surrendering to it, which is always part of it, taking that leap of faith,
Yeah.
and then opening themselves up to this field of potential, to use your term.
Yeah, I love it. The someone once said of the project I have with a couple of friends working around addiction, oh, this is like an insight incubator. It's like, yes, that's exactly
Ooh,
what this is. It's just
that's
good to,
brilliant language. I
yeah, yeah,
love
it's
it.
nice. Hey? So yeah, feel free that you can borrow, because it sounds to me like you're absolutely creating an insight incubator, which looks really different to creating a space that's full of a bunch of information,
Mm.
because it isn't just about information collecting. And
Mm.
it's funny, you reminded me, do you know what, I can track exactly when we had our last conversation, because I wrote a post off the back of it, which became my first ever post on Substack, which was
Oh,
called
yes.
how to realize your potential without destroying yourself along the way, or something like that.
Yes, I remember now.
And it was just this kind of play on words, I bet, around this, kind of the word realization, and the kind of to realize something is in to kind of achieve it or to work towards it, which is the often the way that we relate to it, versus to realize it, to recognize it, to see that it's already in there for it
Yeah.
to be just known all of a sudden.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that's the thing about potential. That's the thing about creativity and love and contentment. Given that life works one way,
Mm.
those things can only be found inside. They're not,
Yeah.
then they're already in there. And I
Yeah.
can only imagine, having been in the world of education myself, Sarah, the impact that that has on people in that world, to be honest, because Well, I mean, the entire educational system, in a way, it's not just, you're not just working with individual humans. There's a way in which you're working with the educational system and how it's filtering through those spaces and places as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. This feeds into much that we've been discussing recently. So maybe the first point is the word potential is used extensively within education,
Yeah.
but as a kind of a little soundbite without really grounding it. I think what we do, I hope what we do is make the whole idea of what is potential, where is it in the human design, profound, but really, really practical. We have a way of sharing it, experiencing it, inquiring into it, so that more and more, as we said earlier, of these innate capacities are seen in the world. So that's our intention. There is a very sticky language. There's loads of metaphors that we use to explore. And then the benefit of that, hopefully, it stays within the school, it stays within the
Yeah.
community so that it can continue to be explored and seen.
Yeah, that's it strikes me that it's not really, I know we use words like programs and but these things they're more akin to they cause structural change as far as I can tell in people,
Mm.
in really there's a perceptual update to people's
Yeah.
reality, and
Mm.
that's profound. I don't have you ever read do you know the work of Robert Anton Wilson and his
No,
books?
I don't.
So his books he's written a few books. One called well there's a bunch. Quantum Psychology is one and Prometheus Rising is another. But those books are more like a trip or something. They're more like a psychedelic trip than they are a book. You read them and your mind melts and there's these little experiments in there and knowing you as I do, Sarah, I imagine that the amount of thought and but also freedom and the expansiveness that's available is that this isn't just your usual sit put your bum on the seat and I'm going to show you a few slides and
Mm.
here's some stuff to remember. It sounds like a fully immersive, and I know from having read what people have commented about the program itself
Mm.
and watch some of the content myself, I know how immersive it is. I know that it's yeah, it's not just your usual professional development, shall we say?
It is not. It is not. And we have in fact, I just created a new pop-up that has got that quote on it. So it's one of
Right?
our head teacher explorers says this isn't continuing professional development, it's continuing life development. So
Nice.
there is that kind of level of upgrade that can happen. And I am hugely grateful. We are hugely grateful for the pioneer leaders that have taken that leap of faith when it is not easy to describe this. I mean, you know that it's not
Yeah,
easy
yeah,
to say this is what you're going to achieve. These are the learning objectives because we can't define that. We take people on the exploration, but we say it's tailor-made for them. Whatever they see about themselves. And that is a whole range. We get everything from actually, this is a nice set of tools and techniques and they're really useful, to this has completely changed my life. My perspective has shifted entirely as a result of this and everything in between.
yeah. Are you able to share some of the real world downstream or upstream, however you want to think of it, impacts this has had on some of these settings? Are there particular things that come to mind if you look in that direction?
Oh, there are lots. There's so many little anecdotal stories. And there are many little testimonials on our website which I think they speak to a kind of humanity,
Mhm.
which giving people permission to not be their roles, for example, to release from that sense of pressure and accountability, which is huge within education. I'm deeply concerned about the system in terms of impact it's having on particularly head teachers at the moment. And there's a kind of a craziness to that you think, why are we doing this to these people? We're creating the conditions where there's a bunch of burnout is more likely than thriving, which you don't want burnt out head teachers leading schools. It just not doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yes, so lots of really lovely examples. And many of them just showing up differently to situations, just showing up far more pure presence, as we say on the program, far more open, far more creative, far more connected. There's lovely examples of people not following processes in terms of appraisals and performance management and just sitting with their people and listening at a much clearer, deeper level, and then building that high trust connection, which then yields much greater benefits within the school, within the classroom, or within the organisation. I think I mentioned to you, we've just completed the programme with a well-known humanitarian organisation, and that was
Nice.
exactly the feedback that we got, just being
Nice.
able to be more connected and present to each other.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I mean, just reflect on my own experience from teaching, just that distinction between, the intellect and wisdom. And there wasn't, I mean, not be unfair on any of us to say that there was no space for wisdom. But I think for me, a lot of the time, I was so busy having plan A, and if that doesn't work, it's plan B, and if that doesn't work, it's plan. And I had these lesson plans that looked beautiful and would have won awards probably for how intricate and fantastic they were. Meanwhile, there I was frazzled and all over the shop trying to hunt for perfection and all this kind of stuff. And there wasn't really much room in the gap for wisdom to kind of come through. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think the more people get struck by that, the better. And I remember our last conversation, we were talking about how when somebody comes to realize that even the idea of workload is a thought form, and
Yes.
that to kind of for that to kind of pop and
Yeah.
to kind of see, wow, that's a thought form. That's something that's
Yeah.
created through the power of thought, and it doesn't have to be created in that way, and it doesn't exist in the way that we often relate to it. Is a very, very freeing thing for people to come to see. There's a not that there aren't things to do and books to be marked and the very real realities of being a teacher, but it's funny. I wrote something the other day. I said I'm going to forget the exact way it came out now, but it was something like most of us aren't tired because life is hard from time to time. We're tired because we got the idea it's our job to manually run reality, and that just kind of seems at the center of a lot of
Totally.
this. you
Yeah,
know?
you're totally right. There is this huge sense of we've got to manage
Yeah,
life, which if you just sit with how crazy that is, life, nature, the universe, however we want to kind of describe it, is running itself. We are just part of that. The seasons change, the planets turn, and we're just part of that. So the fact that we even imagine that we've got to manage that is slightly crazy in itself. So
yeah,
we just have to be part of that, as aligned to it as much as possible, and then we will flourish as a result of that.
yeah. It's beautiful. And so when you took pure potential into the humanitarian sector, are you able to take does the things need tweaking? Do you shift up how you run through? Obviously, there's no one adventure that's going to be the same. Nothing.
Yes.
There's never been
Yeah.
anything that's ever been the same as anything else. But how does that look when you move into different sectors with it?
It's very much anchored in context. So the content and the shape of the journey is pretty consistent, and we've only tweaked that on the basis of tiny bits of feedback, because we've got to the point. I guess we've taken about 130 so leaders through the program. Our mantra is trust the process. There's an element of we kind of know when it's going to feel difficult for people. We kind of know that when we get to the deepest part of the program, and we look at identity, that we know the kind of reactions that we get to that. So the content is the same, but we ground it very much in the context. So we do a very thorough research process, qualitative and quantitative research, where we're really trying to understand the inner landscape of all of our explorers. And then that becomes a thematic analysis. And then we use those themes to kind of thread through the journey, and then come back and look at them afresh once we've collectively understood the design, and we've got a fresh perspective.
Amazing.
And the
Yeah.
biggest shift in that, Sam, the biggest shift, which is just, I would love every meeting. You imagine every interaction in every school, every workplace today started with, how are you seeing this? What's your perspective?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about it? What ideas are coming through you, as a human being. But we miss that simple, obvious point, and we go straight to, there is an objective problem out here, and it's solid and real, and we need to solve that objective problem. But it always starts with us. There is no objective problem, there's only a subjective perspective on what looks like a problem.
Yeah, nice, nice. Well, yeah, that's it. And so much of our problems are just trying to fix, whatever's been created in the world of thought, the thinking that we've got. And the moment that we kind of are able to release that and just take a step into the formless, if you like, things just look so different. Yeah, I can remember someone saying to me on a call a few weeks ago that a lady came onto a call and she said, I've got it. I've finally seen it. I heard you say something and I didn't know what you were on about, but there's no such thing as problems. I was like, oh,
Yes. Hurrah! Hallelujah.
oh, brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff sounds like it sounds bonkers and off the wall, but then,
Yeah.
and then it's funny, because a few weeks later we're having a chat. Oh, I don't feel as connected to it. And it's just the ebb and the flow of just like we see
Exactly. Yeah.
things, they're clear as day, and then not so much, and then we see them more deeply again, in my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. The
So
biggest, the key question we ask at the kind of final stages is what is it made of? So any problem, you ask the question, what's it made of? But actually that is interesting because there is you're going to say it's made of thought, but then you want to say, no, what do you think is made of? What in your experience is it made of?
yes, yeah,
Because I
yeah,
think as you've said before, you can kind of intellectually go, oh yeah, it's made of thought. It's my subjective perspective.
that's it,
But
right?
then to really integrate and align from that is the kind of the next, I guess, stage really, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing when Sid was walking around going, it's all thought. It's all thought. Why won't anyone go inside? Listen to me. It's all thought. It's because, at first level, people tend to hear, so it's about my thinking then. And,
Yeah.
there's that
Mhm.
exploration. And of course, thought, as far as I can tell, for Sid was a shorthand for this incredible creative power that we all are.
Mhm.
It's not that there's us and our experience, it's that we are experience, right? Like it's that
Mhm.
central recognition, no separation. And I love that. I love that you've found a way to take something so important into, a world that I'm going to guess in some ways is relatively resistant to certain, this is going to be the case in many. We were talking about, the current paradigm in science, education, and the kind of the resistance, the kind of like the sunk cost fallacy. We've been doing it for so long like this, we can't
Yeah.
change things now. And so to have found a way in is beautiful, and
Yeah.
it speaks volumes about, the connection that you have to your creativity and your potential, Sarah, because it's no easy feat to reach leaders, and I really really hope that, and I'm sure it will, that it continues to grow and expand and all that good stuff. And I'm curious, like these things are probably completely interwoven, but what are some of the things that you've really come to see for yourself, or a couple of things over the course of the last year or two that, personally, that have really profoundly made a difference to you? And as I say, I understand that's completely connected to the work that you're up to, but what comes through there?
What comes through there? It's not down to me. It's probably the biggest one. And who am I anyway? It's it's a spoiler alert, but I am pure potential. So if I'm just pure potential and I'm just that, then there really is just being alive. There is just showing up, waking up every morning, going, oh, this is another new day, and how's my state of mind, and what am I noticing, and what's coming through me. I mean, the biggest shift for me was just we talk about the infinite stream of consciousness or potential being infinite or thought being infinite. And you can kind of sit with that as a nice idea, but then experientially, if you're really attuned to that, that's just phenomenal. It's just unbelievably incredible that we can just rely on fresh thinking all the time, fresh thinking. So I just and maybe this shows up particularly in relationships. And I just recorded a video for the share journey, which is the one that kind of goes into schools on separate realities and are difficult people. And the invitation to that is that we will hold a story about people that becomes our kind of
Yeah,
seemingly fixed experience of that person. And when we see that our experience of that person is made of that story, and we have an infinite capacity for fresh story, for fresh narrative,
yeah,
then that opens up so much in terms of connection and relationships. And in a world that is doing everything it can from a kind of digital space, AI perspective, social media perspective to kind of disconnect, then I think that is absolutely critical for us. So I have felt that benefit personally.
Yeah.
And just that allowing myself to be completely present to another person is an absolute joy. It is the joy really of life, isn't it? That we can be, be with each other as pure potential to see what wants to be created collectively and collaboratively through us.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, we can be in relationship with the idea of someone in our head for years,
Yeah,
decades, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I like using the metaphor of, holograms. Like you think about, I'm on a call, you're in front of 30 people, 50 people, and there's 50 different Sabs playing out all these different holographic versions. And then I'm a hologram to myself as well, of course, which is the kicker as well. But
Mm.
the whole, it's fascinating. The freedom of thought piece looks central to me. I've been looking in this direction a lot recently because, as you know, well, I don't know if you do know, but like the understanding of people's understanding of free will and all these kinds of things, and if life is really just moving us, and choice, and these very interesting questions that have been inquired about for millennia, actually, in many different traditions, in many of the non-dual traditions. And Sid would talk about free will, and I don't know how you see it, but the way I now come to see it is freedom of thought, the possibility that any experience can be created within us in any circumstance, I think
Mm.
is a really powerful thing to come to know. Because this question of like, well, isn't it just all determined, these things that people talk about? Well, it doesn't look like that's what the freedom of thought is talking to. It's talking to
Yeah,
this open potential of
yeah,
anything being, and in any moment, like you say, we can have an insight, and our entire understanding of a relationship or can shift in the face of that creative power.
Mm.
And so it's a fascinating thing to explore, I think.
I agree. I agree. And I think our tendency is to be a bit binary. It's either this or it's this. But
Exactly right.
I
Yeah.
just don't think it is. I think it's well, it's a mystery. We will never know,
Yeah.
probably. But I think it's a co-creation. I think we have this form as a human and our ability to think, deeply. But we are utterly connected to, this universe that we're, or nature, or whatever we're part of, or God, if there's a faith element to your tradition. And yeah, we're in co-creation with that. We mentioned briefly, I had the pleasure of talking to a hugely experienced, knowledgeable cosmologist recently who she talked about being bored of explaining that the universe is relational and intelligent, because all of the science will say that now. And the way she described it is we're making choices every day, and then the universe is kind of responding to those choices and decisions and then rerouting. So the question of predetermination and destination is kind of interesting in that. So that there's a general direction, but in the co-creation, we're kind of shifting and changing that all the time. And I think that's what the potential is.
Yeah.
You know?
It's beautiful. Like all we get to really is metaphors, isn't it? No, Joan Tollefson talks about, the direction of the ocean is going in one direction, but waves are going off this way and that
Yeah,
way. And,
yeah,
all these
yeah,
metaphors are kind of helpful. And I think it's very, very helpful for people to come to realize that the part, anything that's played out the only way it could. And that
yeah,
there's, yeah,
yeah.
all we're ever doing is what makes sense at our current level of understanding. And that doesn't mean some kind of fatalistic future, because insight, the directionality of life, things changing on a God, I was going to say dime. I'm so Americanized these days, changing on a sixpence or whatever the British phrase is. And that's what we're talking about, is that there's that beautiful quote from Eckhart Tolle who says, choice, quote unquote, choice implies consciousness. Like if we're kind of so innocently caught in our patterning and caught in that which has been created, where's the choice? But then the moment there's that waking up to the potential that we are, well, it's
Mhm.
just freedom at that point. Life can move in who knows however many different directions. And yeah, the way I often relate to it is kind of options on the menu. The amount of options on the menu when we're kind of caught up, maybe it looks like there's one or two, but then suddenly
Yeah.
we fall into pure potential, and it's sort of like just infinite options on the menu at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
that as a metaphor as well.
I do. That is beautiful. Yeah. And then the kind of sense of flow and effortlessness that comes from that settled state of mind.
I have a question. I have a question. I'm
Okay.
fascinated because people will often say, and I kind of have my own way of relating to this and speaking to this, but and maybe people will say this to you, Sarah, but people often say to me, if it's infinite potential, and if anything can happen, anything can change, anything can move through us, how can I possibly determine what's wisdom or what's this or what where's the kind of where's the thread in that? I don't know if
Mm.
that's something that comes up for you, but what do you say to people if they bring up things such as this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what I would say, but I've heard many teachers in this space talk about
Yeah.
the design. The more we're attuned to that, the more we're getting a sense of what is intuition versus what is the ego jumping in
Yes.
with and managing this. And maybe that's the lifelong journey of how do you continue that attunement? How do you continue to be as present and as possible to reality and as loose and soft on the ego so that you've got that sense of, yeah, this is the direction of travel. This makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Um, and we must come back to it. We're not saying that the ego is a bad thing. It's a necessary part of being human.
You bet.
And from a kind of a cosmology level, there is clearly something at play in that allows me to be having a conversation with you now.
Yeah.
You know, if we were just melded together on the formless level, we wouldn't be able to do this. So we need to be perceiving the separation, both in terms of space, but also time. We need to be able to distinguish one thought from another thought
Yeah.
in order to have a sense of experience. So it's a gift, that having this separation is a gift. It's only when we grip to that being reality that we
Yeah.
trip ourselves up. So
That's it. I often say to people that, the gift of thought and the ability to be able to dream the illusion of separation has to be available because otherwise it wouldn't be free, right? We
no,
wouldn't be able
exactly.
to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, beautiful. This has been a really lovely conversation for me as well. In the autumn, I haven't put together a program that I've wanted to run for a long time called Wisdom Doesn't Follow Rules. And every time I get close to it, I'm like, oh, not yet. But I think it's this just built on a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. Yeah, it just gives me more of a feeling that it's time to go in that direction. And that to
Yeah,
me, by the way, to me, it's the feeling. It's learning to
yeah,
intuit into like what is the feeling, if you like, of wisdom. What is the feeling
yeah,
that nudge this way, that way, versus you know our kind of we can just the way it looks to me is if we start looking in that direction, we can start to hear in a different way. And Ian McGilchrist, we were talking about his beautiful work earlier and talking at that metaphor of left and right hemisphere and just tuning into a more right divine feminine way of
yeah,
intuiting and hearing and listening, I think is a really powerful metaphor to tune into because we live in a very left hemisphere dominated culture, right? It's about power in the intellect and and order and all this kind of stuff. And actually it seems that we're desperate for a different way of relating to life.
yeah, I agree. And there's a huge amount about kind of trust in that as well, I think, of just, I mean, I had kind of another system upgrade last year, as we tend to
Nice.
call
Yeah.
they kind of keep coming, don't they? It was a really significant one last year for lots of hugely significant. And what came with that was a real clear sense of quite a big vision, quite a strong
Mm.
sense of this is where it's heading in a number of years' time. But I've got no idea, is that going to play out or not? And multiple paths to that vision. But all we can do is notice that that's what the mind has done for whatever reason. We've no idea whether that's made up or whether that's actually a sense of, yeah, this is where it's going. So all we can do is stay close to that, and trust that if there is something unfolding in that direction, then we're being held and carried in that direction. There's not a lot we necessarily need to do to effort that. We just need to be present to it.
Yeah, and there's that beautiful quote by Joseph Campbell: "If you can see your path laid out ahead of you, then it's not your path,"
Yeah,
which makes me smile when
yeah.
I hear that. It's just that constant co-creation, isn't it? That constant one foot in front of the other. And I remember I was listening to again, Jamie. Someone asked him, "What's something you'd love to have known at the beginning?" And he said, "You know, realistically, just the power of just doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and just being with whatever it is that comes up along the way, and then doing the next
Yeah.
thing and then doing the next thing. You'll walk into a life more beautiful than you could have imagined, and you're capable of far more than you know, you know."
That is really, really lovely. Yeah, and many wise people have said the only thing that really trips us up is our imagination when it's used against us,
Yeah, yeah.
to block our path. So yeah.
Or anything I can ever do to be of service or to help in the mission. I'm here. I just think it's such a beautiful. I mean, I have me and my friend Scott have recently just started putting some videos out on YouTube under a channel called Built for Reality. And the whole
Mm,
premise behind it is basically to kind of take this conversation into themes and areas where some people seem a bit hesitant to go, be it
yeah.
world affairs, tech, AI, all these
Mhm.
kinds of things. Because I think ultimately, if this conversation is going to get to a broader audience, it needs to be taken into just different places and spaces where people who might not be looking for it might stumble across it. The
Yeah.
kinds of people that might want to poke their eyes out at a word like spirituality. However, if they were learning about, remaining calm in this seemingly chaotic world right now, it might have an access point it wouldn't have otherwise, right? So, yeah, I think I've got a huge amount of respect for people that are doing the serious work on the ground as I see it. Not that it's not all work on the ground. I think you know, creating things and running retreats and all these are really beautiful and it's all needed. But
Mm,
it's tough, to sometimes gain access to these places and to to
mm.
to be able to access educational institutions and these kinds of things. So I have a huge amount of respect for it, and it's really needed.
Thank you, Sam. And maybe just on the back of that, just to say what's really occurred to me, and this is a kind of a little mini passionate rant, but what's really occurred to me recently is that there is a huge injustice here. This is probably the biggest injustice in generations, the fact that we're not teaching our children who they are really and how their experience is created from the inside out, moment to moment.
Yeah,
And we are suffering as a result. I have had a number of conversations this week with classroom practitioners, with head teachers who are dealing with deeply disturbed children, distressed, fearful, and that's showing up in their behavior and the amount of kind of exclusions and challenges that come from that. So there is a root cause, and the root cause is children are confused and fearful because they do not understand who they are. So I stand by that, and it's what drives me every single day. So maybe to any listeners that kind of see and are that as well, then there are options. There are pointing people in this direction. And there are I think, very clear, practical, pragmatic ways of teaching children. I was actually at a conference the other week where, and as education conferences, they talk about dysregulation in children, which I really don't like that language because it
yeah,
just makes children sound like machines that need to be turned down or switched off. And no, children are amazing, alive little beings and need to be held and respected as such. But there was a lot of talk about managing emotions and managing behavior.
yeah,
And I actually gently raised the question about something preventative could be actually teaching children about why they're dysregulated in the first place, what's actually going on with them within them.
yeah,
And I was immediately shut down. They wouldn't understand that, which is it's so fascinating to me. This kind of sense of, I guess it's a sense of intellectual arrogance almost. There's no way children could understand that, but I will not back down from. I think they can. I think they absolutely can. We just
yeah.
need to give them a chance.
I think I don't know how this will who could know how this will unfold, but there's no doubt that if this is gonna get out there, there has to be a lot of people that are kind of courageously standing there and saying, "No, this is how it works. This is how it works." Because I mean, I can remember Jamie once saying to me, before I've even got to a point of like a real conversation about this, I have to convince people it's even real. Like, people are
Yeah.
still running on. I read a fantastic article yesterday about how really challenging, the body keeps the score stuff, and how even the most updated neuroscience is talking about predictive processing, and how, yes, it looks like it's coming from the body, but it's effectively the system having just learned a certain response to certain,
Yeah.
and that speaks like the level. But I'm like, oh my God, we're so close, because the next step is it's all thought, and that through the power of insight, that in all that quote unquote dysregulation can start to be flushed through the system in that understanding. And I'm like, we're so close. But of course, people are just clinging on to their paradigm because it's, that's what happens, so it will be. It's not going to be, I think Sid thought, oh, it'll take me a few weeks. I'll just tell some priests, and the next thing it'll be, and it didn't quite play out like that. But it is changing, and funnily enough, I actually think, I don't know how, if you see this as from your side, but there's a huge amount of work that's being done, and it's not really even being labeled the three principles
Yeah.
or the inside
Yeah.
out. It's just filtering through, and people are doing their own thing with it. And so for everything that you and I know about, there's probably two or three things happening that we haven't caught sight of, I think,
Yeah.
which is great to know.
It is great to know, and that's probably more of a optimistic and hopeful sense. Yeah.
Well, I think the fire is great, by the way. I think it's absolutely. I don't think there's anything. I think that's great. I think passion, and I'm with you. It's in it. Like, on the one hand, it's completely innocent, and on the other hand, it's a huge injustice that we're not
It
doing
is.
something that could
Yeah,
really make
yeah,
such a
it is.
difference.
And actually, the wisdom in children attempting to tell us. I mean, a conversation around the send and neurodivergent space at the moment. I mean,
Yeah,
I know firsthand experience through my daughter. It's like these children are going, no, the system needs to change.
yeah,
We need spaces to learn that are nurturing, exciting, energizing, relational, connecting. That's what we want and need to thrive as human beings. Instead of, this is the economic model and you need these skills and this knowledge and we've got to pour these into you. I mean, so outdated. It's a materialistic machine model, kind of stumbling out of the Industrial Revolution. It's crazy that that's still
yeah,
the
yeah.
notion that everything is built on.
Well, there we go. I was
On that bombshell.
on that bombshell. Yeah, what a beautiful exploration as always. And yeah, it'd be really nice to connect back in and see how things changing. I have no doubt that whatever that wisdom and that intuitive hit of, whoa, that's a big vision. There's so much guidance in there for you, and I just look forward to seeing what else you create in the world.
Oh, thank you, Sam. And thank you for, the wonderful, enriching, joyful conversation. It's an absolute pleasure to connect. And yeah, I mean, on Pure Potential, I kind of think it knows where it wants to go.
That's it, right?
I'm not really leading it. I'm just kind of along for the ride, and all I need to do is show up as present as possible and intuit the sense of what's most helpful given the context that we're in.
So the website,
Yes.
purepotential.org.
Org.
I was going to say, I
Yeah.
thought it was .org. Okay, so
It's
purepotential.org.
pure-potential.org.
The hyphen is important, to be fair.
Hyphen is important. We have quite a strong following on LinkedIn now. So if you're
Right.
in the professional space, please follow us on LinkedIn and on Instagram.
And just as a personal shout out, if anyone's listening to this and you know people that are in education, or you teachers, or if you think there's anyone that could be helped by what Sarah's up to, I would just implore people to go and have a look at the website, or to send a link, and just because I know that, there's nothing more powerful than a recommendation or a referral, or being touched by something and then kind of just pointing someone in that direction. And I know that it's for all of the amazing work that you're doing, the snowball thing is going to be reliant on people kind of really just sharing the message, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. You really tune into that. And a very easy entry point. We run an hour exploratory workshop. We've done that a few times now. So it's a fun, interesting little taster of pure potential. So we could run that in your school if you had innovative, open leaders who wanted just to have a sense of where we point people.
perfect. Well, thanks for coming on. I look forward to the next time.
Definitely. Hope there is one. Thank you so much, Sam.
There will be. You're so welcome, mate.